We are in Mark chapter 7 this morning. We're going to start with verse 1 as we read together, and I hope that this blesses you as much as it has me to study it. There are some passages that, until I really put in the time and the thought and the prayer that comes into thinking, what is it, God, that you have for us today from this passage, I am sometimes just astounded at what God has. And this morning, I've entitled our sermon, Fingers Crossed. And that has to do with that little practice that some people had probably as children, where they're feeling compelled to lie. They know lying is wrong, so behind their back they have their fingers crossed saying, you know, this doesn't really count. I'm not really lying because my fingers are crossed. And really, when you think about it, it's kind of a silly practice. It does not take away the lie. No one in a court of law accused of perjury or lying would be able to say, well, Your Honor, I had my fingers crossed, so it doesn't really count. I mean, we know it doesn't really take it away, but it shows that the person knows what they're telling is not true. Well, the trouble is that if we live our lives with having our fingers crossed, not just about lying, but who we are, who we really worship, what we're really about, what we really think. If we live our lives like that, there's a real danger that nothing is really genuine or real, and that we can get ourselves into quite a mess. So I'm not in any way this morning accusing you or me of saying that is what we do. It's more of a let's not ever get into this mess thing. But you may find, as I did, that there are areas of your life that could be more honest, that could be more God-honoring, that could be changed by the Holy Spirit. Mark chapter 7, verse 1. Now when the Pharisees gathered to him with some of the scribes who had come from Jerusalem, they saw that some of his disciples ate with hands that were defiled, that is, unwashed. For the Pharisees and all the Jews do not eat unless they wash their hands, holding to the tradition of the elders. And when they come from the marketplace, they do not eat unless they wash. And there are many other traditions that they observe, such as the washing of cups and pots and copper vessels and dining couches. And the Pharisees and the scribes asked him, why do your disciples not walk according to the tradition of the elders, but eat with defiled hands? And he said to them, well did Isaiah prophesy of you hypocrites. As it is written, the people honors me with their lips. This people honors me with their lips, but their heart is far from me. In vain do they worship me, teaching as doctrines the commandments of men. You leave the commandment of God and hold to the tradition of men. And he said to them, you have a fine way of rejecting the commandment of God in order to establish your tradition. For Moses said, honor your father and your mother, and whoever reviles father or mother must surely die. But you say, if a man tells his father or his mother, whatever you would have gained from me is Corban, that is, given to God, then you no longer permit him to do anything for his father or mother, thus making void the word of God by your tradition that you have handed down, and many such things you do. So we have a group that's come all the way from Jerusalem, a long trip. Think about if you were going to be in the presence of Jesus and you had one question, what would it be? What is it that just doesn't seem clear to you or you'd really like to know? take a minute and really think about what would you like to ask. Well, these people walked, possibly rode, but there were no really good ways to get there. They walked a long way from Jerusalem to come and ask Jesus, why don't your disciples wash their hands before they eat? That was their pressing question. Now, really, they were not offended so much at the fact that the disciples weren't washing their hands. What really was causing their offense was Jesus himself. He had just shown people through the miracle of breaking bread and feeding 5,000 plus people. He had shown that he was that bread of life, just like manna that had come from heaven. He was showing a startling, just troubling fact that had the possibility of destroying everything these people held really, really important to them. And whether they could articulate that, they felt it within them like, oh my, this could really bring us down. And when we are in that position, it's easier to kind of pick at little things than it is to say exactly what's bugging you, really. And often when people do criticize, whether it's something about church or God, often what they say is not really what's bugging them. And the hand washing wasn't as big a deal probably as we think. But they came to Jesus and they said, why don't you follow our tradition? If you want to be a rabbi, if you want to help our nation, you have to follow the rules. And the rules were things that had been built out beyond God's commandments, beyond anything God had really said. And they defended it then, and still do today. Many of us still defend similar things today as a fence around to protect what's really, really important. So if you put the fence out here and make it a little harder than what's really, really important, the hope is that you'll never get to the point of actually offending God or breaking a commandment. And I can kind of see the wisdom in that. I remember times when I was a kid, rules within the Assemblies of God were much more specific than they are now. And we used to have on the back of our membership cards that you can't smoke cigarettes or tobacco, you can't go to movies. It just went on and on. There was a whole list of stuff. It never said in the Bible anywhere that you couldn't do that. We were, in the same way, sort of putting a fence around to sort of protect people from ever even getting close to that center, really important, of things that they might offend God about or seriously sin about. It was a similar kind of practice. But I'm not saying that Jesus was putting down all the tradition of the elders, and many people take this passage as actually meaning that. Instead, what he's saying is, what's really bothering you? What's really important? And to help them understand that, he entered into a kind of an argument with them, which is what they love to do. The people were really smart, really into Jewish religion and tradition, sat around and discussed, we might say argued, just battered with words back and forth in almost like an exercise to help them get to the real truth of the matter. And so Jesus enters into an argument that was already out there. You know, they didn't have newspapers per se, but it was something that was already there about Corban. He says to them, so you, in your things, very similar to this ritual hand washing that you require, you also say when someone, your parents actually, he didn't just say someone, but he said your parents, when they're in need of financial help, you fall back on this idea of Corban, which would say, my property or this land, this cornfield or whatever, is dedicated to God. And it's for His purpose, and I cannot sell it for any practical need that I might have. And on top of that, the religious leaders would support you in that, even if you said, I was rash. I love God and I wanted to give that field to Him. But now my parents, there was no Social Security, there was no money, and now my parents, have a financial need and I don't have any liquid assets to help them. I really should sell that field. The religious leaders would say, no, you dedicated that to the Lord and you can't take that back. So Jesus was talking to religious leaders about traditions that they had, and He was saying, look at your heart. Look at why you do this. So you could really protect anything you owned. If you had this sense, wow, I'm going to feel compelled to help, and it might not be your parents, it could be anyone. I'm going to feel they're having a fix the roof on our local synagogue, and I really don't want to give money I have to that. So I'm going to say all my stuff is Corban. And it's still a practice. It's hard for us to understand that today, like how did that practically work out? But you still owned your stuff. You still, let's say it was today, this isn't it, but let's say you could protect your bank account. You could protect your stocks. You could protect your retirement, something that you don't really want to spend. But there's a need in someone around you, and so you say, Corban. And it's safe. Can't touch it. Nobody can fault you for that. Well, Jesus pointed out to them that God's commandment actually was honor your father and mother. And so whenever you have a rule or a tradition or something that just butts right up against what God really said and negates that, your rule should go to the wayside. Now, this is such an awkward thing. It's why one reason I struggled with it. I kept saying, so what does that mean for us today, God? And I think it would do us well to just remind ourselves, so what were those 10 commandments that God gave? We no longer can have them publicly posted. Maybe you have them posted somewhere in your house. Maybe you have them so well memorized that you recite them regularly. But the trouble with that is it's easy to leave out the one that you are not honoring. So let's look there. You can find them in Exodus. I'm going to read today from Deuteronomy chapter 5, starting at verse 6. I am the Lord your God, who brought you out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of slavery. You shall have no other gods before me. You shall not make for yourself a carved image or any likeness of anything that is in heaven above, or that is on the earth beneath, or that is in the water under the earth. You shall not bow down to them or serve them, for I, the Lord your God, am a jealous God, visiting the iniquity of the fathers on the children to the third and fourth generation of those who hate me, but showing steadfast love to thousands of those who love me and keep my commandments. You shall not take the name of the Lord your God in vain, for the Lord will not hold him guiltless who takes his name in vain. Observe the Sabbath day to keep it holy, as the Lord your God commanded you. 6 days shall you labor and do all your work, but the seventh day is a Sabbath to the Lord your God. On it you shall not do any work, you or your son or your daughter or your male servant or your female servant or your ox or your donkey or any of your livestock or the sojourner who is within your gates, that your male servant and your female servant may rest as well as you. You shall remember that you were a slave in the land of Egypt, and the Lord your God brought you out from there with a mighty hand and an outstretched arm. Therefore the Lord your God commanded you to keep the Sabbath day. Honor your father and your mother, as the Lord your God commanded you, that your days may be long and that it may go well with you in the land that the Lord your God is giving you. You shall not murder. You shall not commit adultery. You shall not steal, and you shall not bear false witness against your neighbor. You shall not covet your neighbor's wife, and you shall not desire your neighbor's house, his field, or his male servant, or his female servant, his ox, or his donkey, or anything that is your neighbor's. These words the Lord spoke to all your assembly at the mountain out of the midst of the fire, the cloud, and the thick darkness, with a loud voice, and he added no more. And he wrote them on 2 tablets of stone and gave them to me. So that's Moses speaking to them. And as we look at those 10 commandments, we remember that Jesus, when questioned about it, when asked, what is the greatest commandment? He said that the greatest commandment is to love God with all your heart, soul, and strength. And he said, and the second is close to it, love your neighbor as yourself. So he didn't say, honor your father and your mother is the greatest commandment. He summed them all up and said, if you do these 2 things, if you love God with all that you have and love your neighbor, that you'll keep those things. And if you think about it, that's true. I cannot love my neighbor and covet what he has. I cannot love my neighbor and take his wife in adultery. I cannot love my neighbor and steal or kill or any of the commandments. They are summed up in that way. I cannot love God and not set aside time to worship him. I cannot love God and worship things. We don't have so many idols these days, but they're not statues that we bow down to, but we bow down to things in our culture all the time. We bow down to sports, worship, movie stars, people that impress us and are wealthy. Those are our idols. And he said, don't have them. Don't have anything that's higher than God. So Jesus was speaking to people who could have quoted that passage right out. They wouldn't have had to read it like me. They could have told him every nuance of the passage. And that's the danger when we know God's word so well that we already have an excuse or an explanation for every part of it that we don't really keep. And we have those. We have excuses. We are quick to make provision for our own comfort, just as the people Jesus was talking to were saying their property was preserved, that they just couldn't help their parents or anyone who needed it. Now, getting back to the idea of the ritual hand washing, I said already that it wasn't so much that they were bothered that the disciples weren't doing that, but really they were. They were in the sense that if Jesus was going to be one of them, if he was going to be a rabbi, be a Jewish rabbi, they expected him to enforce the rules for his disciples. So they were questioning him, why don't your disciples do that? But the real question was, why don't you make your disciples follow the rules? Why are you letting them off? It's not that they were coming in from cleaning fish with fish guts all over their hands or something. It wasn't that they were eating with dirty hands. They were not participating in a ritual, showy thing that the elders had come up with. It was something to show, I am better than you. I am Jewish. I worship the one true God, and I don't eat before I do this. And it was very closely prescribed. If your hands had just, been around your place, around people who were Jewish, you needed a fistful of water. And it was ritual. It was much like Pilate washing his hands of Jesus, of sending him to the cross to be crucified. It was much like that. It was just showing, here you go, everybody. This says, I serve the one true God, and this is what I do before I eat. If you'd been in the marketplace around non-Jewish people, then you needed actually a baptism, an immersion into water of your hands. Same thing, ritual. And they had built places in their homes to actually accommodate this. And it was like, we all line up and do this. And you could even say it was an act of worship. You could say that. Now, there are many things that we do that are our thing, that we do when we're in church. And there are many things that we do not do. Some of them I can think of, I can't really see anything wrong with that per se, but it has just not been part of our practice. But there are many things that we do that might actually scare away or turn off or in some way alienate people who had not been raised in a tradition like we are. They might think, what's that about? I was thinking about it as I was worshiping this morning, and it's natural for me. It doesn't feel weird for me to raise my hands in worship because I've been around people who did that since I was Elena's age. That's just how it's been. But if you haven't been in a tradition like that, think if you were a little kid just on the outside looking in this morning, you might think, what in the world is that woman doing? It's not natural for people nowadays to raise their hands. Often in an arrest situation, a policeman will make you show your hands. They don't want you to have a knife or a gun or something hidden. You're saying, I surrender. And you could say that me raising my hands is saying, God, I surrender. But you could also say, that's a habit. That's something you grew up seeing people do, and it's meaningful to you. But is it necessary for people to raise their hands in worship? Absolutely not. It's not necessary. And I believe that worship is like that it's personal, but we need to make sure that whatever we do in worship means, God, I love you, means that. And if to you, quiet, introspective, not noticing what's around you is how you worship, is how you connect with God, that's what you should do. If it is, as Dwayne has been helping us understand, if it's going out in nature, in the woods, and being close to what God created, if that's how your heart connects with God, that's what you should do. And it's not that you cannot worship with other people or in other situations, but you should never neglect what it is that connects you honestly and truly with God. So Jesus was saying, I'm here, I'm God. We don't need to do any ritual to impress anyone. You have God right here in the middle of you, and you're so caught up with all the things that you've put around to preserve God's law, all those things that you do, you're so caught up in that, you're missing the main event. You're coming here criticizing me. Why don't you have your disciples ritually wash their hands? And the real question is, why are you not able to see Jesus, God, right here with you? And it's important for us today because we have people who are saying, what you do does not help me find God. What you're doing is odd to me, and I can't even hang around with you long enough to pick it up and see, what does it mean to you? Now, that does not mean that they should have stopped washing their hands. That's not what Jesus was saying. He was not saying, that's so stupid, you should stop doing that. If it's meaningful to them before they ate to go through that as a almost a quieting of their soul, to really think, why is it that I have this food to eat right now? I'm blessed with this because Creator God, my Father, sees to it that I have food. And it helps me to sort of let go of what I was just involved in, and it reminds me that God is holy. And I do it, and I feel closer to God, then do it. But don't get caught up in the idea that your worship is what you worship, because that's a problem. And that's where Jesus was showing them God within us will help us know when we're having our fingers crossed behind our back, when we're saying that field is Corban, so I can't help you. God will help us when we're insisting on keeping something for all time forward because it's meaningful to us. We're saying everybody has to do it my way because this works for me and this is what I need. God will help us see that loving our neighbor sometimes means understanding our neighbor and being willing to connect in a way that isn't always comfortable for us. God in our heart will show us that as Moses gave the Ten Commandments, as I read them to you today, was only like the little starting rules for helping us know God. When Jesus came, he said, I didn't come to do away with the law, I came to fulfill it. Meaning it wasn't just about a list of rules that you need to keep. It's a matter of the heart. And if you do it my way, you will do it well. You'll do it right. You won't have to worry about, did I just break that little rule? You won't have to keep making lists and books and all kinds of collections of extra rules to make sure that you keep the really, really important ones. You won't have to do that. You don't have to worry about, did I just step on an ant? Did I step on a crack and break my mother's back? All those things that people have that are almost like, better not do that, I don't know. Things like superstitions, things like things that make us distant from God rather than close to God because we're caught up in the actual performing of the rule. Now, Jesus was not effective in helping most of that group of people ever understand what he was saying, was he? He had about another year of ministry, and those very same spiritual leaders were going to crucify him because he was that dangerous. And I think that churches or groups of people who are on the cutting edge of what God's telling us today are not going to be applauded or welcomed or understood, or we can't expect that people are going to say, wow, you guys really hit that. A few people will. Whoever God is using to come into that experience will. But we often get caught up in, because something doesn't seem to work, because it seems to be a struggle, it must not have been God. But think about the struggle that Jesus continued to have in that next year. It actually ramped up, didn't it? It didn't get easier. The more he revealed himself, the more he showed people, this is who I am, this is my kingdom, this is how it's going to be. We still today have held on to some of the things that people were holding on to instead of Jesus. We still today get concerned about things that are not about loving God and loving your neighbor. The reason that I think that is important is the church has come under the most scrutiny I have ever read about or experienced in the United States ever. Now, we say, Jesus, I quoted earlier that he said, I will build my church, and the gates of hell will not prevail against it. And we hold on to that and say, Jesus is building the church and we're going to be strong. But it does not say, I will build my church in the West, in the United States of America, and nothing's going to touch it. It doesn't say that. Jesus is building his church in China, in Africa, all over the world. There are people who are putting their lives on the line every day, giving up everything they have to see the gospel preached. I'm not doing that. And neither are you, I would bet. Just that you're not. We're the fat cat Christians. We're used to being blessed. We're used to having everything go our way. And I'm sensing this sort of storm coming that's saying the church is irrelevant. It has hurt people. It has bullied people in the name of saying, this is what God says. We have pushed things on people that we don't really know to be the truth. Maybe you and I didn't even do it, but it's been done for hundreds of years, and the price is coming. And we have to really evaluate and say, God, where is it that I fit into 2017? Where is it? And I am just challenged that it's not business as usual. And it may be very uncomfortable for us. And it may be challenging in a way that we are not prepared for, because we've always been able to politically get people to sort of support us and protect us and let us have our nice little churches and our worship and what we have and our tax protection and just all kinds of things. And I really sense that some people literally have become tithers because of the tax benefit. You need to give away some money. And I wonder if we didn't have these in our record keeping, in our statements, if some people would be willing to give. The reason I say that is people often give when they're in the earning, the high earning part of their life. When they retire, they stop. It's no longer beneficial to them. They don't have enough money to give to create a large enough window to even get any credit. The standard giving allowance is better than what they give. And I've seen people over the years that were very committed to tithing who say, well, once I retired, I already gave on my retirement. Well, really, that's not the point with God, is it? What Jesus is saying is it's about your heart. Don't try to serve me and pretend something. Don't do anything that is false or that someone has shamed you into doing or has guilted you into doing or is for show. And that would have been the one thing I'd say about the ritual hand washing. It was very impressive and showy. And so if you're doing anything that you do because what might people think? If you're enforcing a rule or passing out your judgment on someone because what might people think? Let them think what they think, because it only matters what God thinks. And he doesn't honor that fingers crossed. He doesn't honor that. So start where you are. I didn't mean this to pick on any personal thing. I told you, when I studied it, there were things I thought, wow, God, I'm not doing that, am I? Nope. And God still loves you. He still loves me. He's willing to work on us. He knows that we are a work in progress. The phenomenal part about this is that God knows this, and he still loves us. He knew I would be like this, and he still gave his life for me. He knew we would be ungrateful and selfish, and we would bully other people, and we would do that. But let's stop doing that in the power of the Holy Spirit. Let's ask the Holy Spirit not to fulfill our dreams as Americans. Let's ask the Holy Spirit, God, what do you want? What do you see? And it doesn't matter what people think. It matters what you think. It matters how you see me. And as we do that, and I'm not saying that you don't already do that or haven't done that, but as we do that in a sense of evaluating what's important to us, it's not to take it away. Jesus didn't say, stop washing your hands before meals, that's wrong. He didn't say that. He kind of turned it around and said, you're missing the whole point. Isaiah described you well. These people, they honor me with their lips. Their worship shows they honor me, but in their hearts, they fall way short. They fall way short, and I do. And I know that the answer is not us trying really, really hard. The answer is saying, show me, God, show me. Do it through me. And he will, but he will not force his way on you. So if he speaks to you today and tells you something, he expects you to try. He's not going to take over your will and drive your car for you or do something for you. If you're somebody who doesn't follow the speed limit, he expects you to try. He expects you to use your cruise control. He expects you to look at the sign and say, I'm supposed to be going 35 here, And he expects you to try. And that little bit of try, it's like faith. I'm going to try knowing I've tried this before and couldn't do it. But my faith says, God will help me do it. He will help me. He will make me the person that he sees me to be. He will make me the person that matters for eternity, not just today, not just what I want to do today, not just what pleases me, but the person that he's created me to be. This morning, we are going to sing How Deep the Father's Love for us. And as we think about that, it is deep. It is amazing. It is the idea of grace is beyond what we can often even imagine or understand. As you minister to people, you may not necessarily get that sense of, wow, that really worked out good. Thank you, God. You may actually get a sense of, I thought you asked me to do that, God. It doesn't seem to be going that well. Often God protects us from ever seeing the actual effect of our life on someone else because we're all so prone to pride. And we are. We're people who want to be proud of what we do. Let's be proud of who we are in Christ. Let's be proud of who our Father is. You know, there's that sense of honor your father and your mother. I've had people ask me, do I have to honor my father? He abused me as a child. He was mean. He did this, he did that. Do I have to honor my father? You don't have to be glad that your father hurt you. You don't have to be glad that your mother hurt you. That's not the point. It's the idea of not taking that meanness, that thing that was done to you, and turning it back and being mean to the person who did it. And it's not just about our parents. We start with doing it for our parents, but not holding sin about grudges and things to say, I'm never letting you forget that. You hurt me too badly. And that's not a human capacity to do. It's just not. In our humanness, we say, you hurt me, I don't want anything to do with you. Every time I try to make it up with you, you hurt me again. And God says the forgiveness that comes is not about saying the sin is okay, not about saying you need to let them hurt you again. To honor someone means to pray for them, to want God's best for them, to respectfully speak to them, to not use the bad information you have to hurt them more. Those are the ways that we honor people that have hurt us. And there are people that have wonderful parents that they just honor easily, but there are people who have parents that it's hard to honor. And the commandment doesn't go away, but it's based on love God, love your neighbor.